All right, welcome back, everyone. There's no script on this, and it should be a relatively short video. I am doing research, working on. I saw this clip from Matt Walsh. Yeah, I mean, it's no secret that he's queerphobic in general, amongst many things. He's a pretty terrible person. But I saw this clip where he was talking about a gay couple raising a child, and the things that he was saying in it were just gross. I mean, just absolutely disgustingly homophobic. And I wanted to make a video talking about it, and you know, like talking about the statistics and these. He tends to use pseudo academic, pseudo intellectualism, cherry picked data, or like studies or things from sociology and psychology or science that, you know, are very, very old and outdated, or just you know data and things that sound academic, but they're not. You know, it's just made up. And as I started doing research for that video, I started asking, like, where do these data points come from that he's reciting? And so I started digging into that and realized that video is going to be more complicated than I thought, because as you follow down the road to where this information for conservatives, because they love to use these pieces of false information, false data, whatever. But it's basically confirmation bias, whether they have to make it up, whether they have to lie about it, whether they have to reach towards studies that are from the past that are no longer relevant, or whether they have to make biased data. So there tends to be a few groups and an individual that I found that perpetuate this. It sounds academic, you know, and some of the people involved are from, like, they are psychologists, sociologists, you know, the people who work in professions that are academically inclined. But this is why we go off of an academic consensus. There's not really such this rogue doctor who pushed the envelope kind of thing. That's how they tend to think of these people. That's not really what they are. There's good reason to have critique over these people. Like, one of the things that I found that was really big, like, even I, like, as I was watching this one woman, she was making these proclamations of, like, oh, but if you know, queer couples, not straight biological, and she goes to biology too, so even straight people who have adopted, you know, fall under this category, and she does that accidentally, because the problem is that I immediately asked the question, you and I did. I was like, wait a minute, like, she's saying, like, these children will not grow up adjusted and have problems and stuff, but if they're raised by a queer couple, and it's like, but why? What mechanism about them being same sex or trans or you know, like, queer dynamic causes the children to turn out psychologically unadjusted or academically or whatever have you? And she never answers that. Instead, she kind of gives this throwaway idea of biology that there's some kind of intuit connection, it almost sounds supernatural because I mean it's horse shit, that children have towards their biological parents. And the thing is that's really dense. I'm not like a historian, like his history is not like my main bag. That's it, but like one of the fascinations, like went to college for studying art and stuff, and like one of the big things was photography for me. I studied that for like 2 years between high school and college, and one of the big fascinations of photography was the beginning of photography, of like daguerreotypes, tin types, copper types. So I have a lot of books about daguerreotypes from like the 1800s, and have a bit of a morbid fascination with like death and stuff. So I have books about like death and how it was dealt with like even before photography. And I can tell you this whole idea that children must be raised by their biological mother and biological father. Otherwise, they do not grow up mentally well-adjusted and all this other stuff. It doesn't make sense for most of human history because, this is one of the things that we're bumping into now with, like, overturning Roe v. Wade and women not having access to abortion, particularly for ectopic pregnancies, is the mortality rate on birth before the advancements of medical science that we have today was really, really high. So, looking in the past, it wouldn't be uncommon that a man might have, he might raise kids, depending on how many kids the woman had before, the mom had before she died. It wouldn't be uncommon for a father to raise kids by himself. And a lot of that also depends on the economic class they're in. Like also, that's the other thing. You look into history, aristocrat people, even if they survive the birth and everything and don't get gangrene or die from like a tooth infection, which that's like death was just so common back then. Like you could die so easily. You could die from drinking water. You drink water out of a lake or something, you get a bacterial, viral, or parasitical infection and gone. So death rates were really, really high. Like the average life expectancy for most people was like maybe 30 years old. It wasn't that, they were dying of just old age, at age 30 of like, just the chances that you are going to get sick and die or have an accident that caused your death was extremely high. So you wouldn't have really much of a chance to live your full expectancy to the point where, the process of age creates health problems that causes your death. So like with aristocrat families though, even if the biological mom and father were alive, they may not raise the kid. They would have servants or slaves raise their children for them, and including nursing. Pretty wild. So their children would not be raised by them. They're almost like a trophy or a pet or something. Is very bizarre, but that's something that some aristocratic families would do. But it also wouldn't be uncommon to see both parents having died, and you have this situation where like maybe you have older siblings that kind of take on the role of raising their younger siblings as the parents. That happens. You also have this issue where both parents die, and you have sort of a child who's orphaned. And there were people and like in our history where they would find these young people who did not have parents at all, and kind of roaming around the streets, just trying to survive. And they would take them in and mentor them and take care of them and raise them. That was a thing in human history. You go even further back in human history to where we were, tribal people. Again, you're talking about an entire community of people knowing each other and taking care of each other. Like, one kid within a tribal community, it's the job of the entirety of the tribal community to take care of everyone else's kids. So if your parents had died, it wouldn't have been uncommon or unheard of for some, like everyone else in the village, to sort of come together and take care of you. That's just human history. So, like, and the other thing, like, particularly talking about the 1800s, this is very, very common. You have a man who would have like multiple wives because he gets married, she has a baby, she dies. And then he gets married again, she has a baby, she dies. He gets married again, she has a baby, she dies. And, even back then, there's emotional connection, and it gets to you. There's actually, I can't remember the name of this Gothic romantic poet, but a lot of his poems are about the fact that, like, he had multiple wives' graves and a few of his kids who had died, their graves in his backyard, and he just absolutely stricken with melancholia, just depressed, and all of his poems were sort of about this grief that he felt over losing too many wives. And he reached a point where he just didn't want to get married anymore. He couldn't handle the emotional trauma of having to keep losing, these loves of his over and over and over and over again. So, this is not uncommon, in human history, that death rates being what they were, that not only was it highly likely that your mother would probably be dead, but that, the mother dies and giving birth to your youngest sibling, and then father's like, I'm going to go out and hunt and catch us food, gets gangrene and dies himself. I mean, that's human history. It is not indicative of human history that it is particularly, like, biological parents, you try to be raised by biological parents as much as possible. But throughout human history, it's not as common as you think. It's actually really, really common throughout human history, humans as a species, to try to take care of our young, even if they don't belong to us. That's pretty common to the animal that we are. And so this notion of the child just won't develop properly it's antithetical to our understanding of pretty much the entirety of human history. It's almost like she's acting like human beings didn't start existing until today. And that this, hyperbolic representation of human beings, of like the 1950s nuclear family, which is already not even based on reality. It's based off of spectacle that was produced on TV with shows like Leave It to Beaver, Lassie, and stuff like that. These very, very perfectly formed homes. That's sort of a hyperbolic representation of the 1950s nuclear family that wasn't actually the case. The 1950s were just as like any other time. It's things happen. People have tragedies. People run into accidents. People have medical problems. People have financial issues, and so on and so forth. People had mental issues. So this whole notion of it absolutely has to be, before you even get to the queer argument, you're already stumbling into the issue of, but even in cis-het situations of raising children, there are tons of cis-het couples raising children that are not biologically theirs. And there's tons of stories of kids who were raised by non-biological parents, people who adopted them at a very young age and have gone pretty much their whole lives without knowing that they were adopted until they were told later on in life. And it's like, whoa, really? I didn't know that. Who are my actual biological parents? So yeah, you can be raised by parents who are not biologically yours. We're just talking cis-het at this point. And they don't know that their parents are not biological. They're their biological parents. That happens. She has no explanation for this. It's like you're running into problems with your thesis, with your little theory here, or your hypothesis, before you even get to how you think this applies to queer couples raising children. The other aspect too is that queer people can have biological kids too. Adoption is not the only option for queer people. There's other ways to get biological kids for queer people. So again, she can't account for that either. And there's an institution that does this too. But so these are some of the problems. There's all these like issues, like fallacies, issues with the sort of thesis that they run with. There tends to be this issue where they look predominantly at queer couples who live in poverty and look at the outcome of the children. But what they don't seem to recognize is that what they're looking at is not the outcome of children being raised by a same-sex couple as much as they are as looking at the outcome of children who are raised in poverty or by parents with, who are not well adjusted themselves mentally or emotionally, or parents who are irresponsible if there's a divorce. And she tries to make the claim that people who study same-sex couples who raise kids don't look at that stuff, when in all actuality, this is the reason why. Like you have sort of two extremes on, these bigoted, queerphobic people on the far right. They try to use the extreme of same-sex couples will just, ruin a child, but you have this other extreme, like, which I probably fall into the category of, because it does seem a lot of the times children who are raised by same-sex couples end up actually more well-adjusted than children raised by cis-het couples. And there is a reasoning behind that, because sometimes, not all the time, and this is where you get to the consensus, which is somewhere in the center, and I'll get to that in a minute. But the reason why they tend to grow up more well-adjusted is you have situations where you have like two, men who are a gay couple, two women who are a gay couple, and these two couples make an arrangement, and essentially you have a child or multiple children who don't just grow up with one father or two fathers, or a mother and two mothers. They're growing up in a situation where they essentially have two mothers and two fathers. And so they grow up with a very, very well cemented like sense of security, safety, belonging, and a sense of being loved, which is very, very important to psychiatric well-being. You have 4 different financial pools to pull from that go towards education, mental health care, and medical care, and all that. So these kids are being raised very well. So that's kind of the other extreme. But when you look at academia, the general consensus is there's no real difference in outcome between same-sex couples or queer couples in general raising kids and cis-het couples. And if you look at cis-het couples who live in poverty and look at the outcome of those kids, what you find is the same outcome if you look at queer couples who live in poverty and the outcome of their kids. So it has less to, it pretty much, to according to the academic consensus, they're saying that, and the conservative lady with the anti-queer agenda and the institution with an anti-queer agenda, they say that the studies don't look at all this different stuff. They only, look at very specific queer couples raising kids to come up with these biased statistics. In fact, it's the opposite. The ones that, and what's wild is the conservative lady just openly admits that she has a conservative agenda against queer people. She doesn't want them to have kids. She hands down honest about that. And it's like, how can you say that the academic consensus has bias when you are admitting to having bias? But, so what it really factors into is the overall, the academic consensus pulls from over 30 years worth of data, not just on same-sex couples or queer couples, but cis-het couples as well. And what they have found is it doesn't seem to really matter if children are raised by queer couples or cis-het couples, or if they're biological or not. That's irrelevant. The big determining factors are, is the child growing up in a household that is stable? Like, are the parents mentally well adjusted? Is there a divorce involved? What is their economic status? These are the things that play into the outcome of the kids. And even the divorce isn't so big of a deal so long as like it's handled properly. Like, two parents can separate, no hard feelings, and still jointly raise a kid even though they're not married. That's possible. So it has pretty much nothing to do with whether the kids are being raised by queer people or cis-het people. And all these other issues have more to do with the outcome than anything else. Because, if you're growing up in poverty, you have less access to mental health care, less access to a good education, to a good school, less access to medical care, less access to decent nutrition, and so on and so forth. So another thing that I bumped into are there seems to be like sort of three sort of categories of kids who are raised by queer couples that turn out. You have the ones that turn out gay, and there's that speculation that it's taught or learned or something. Well, actually, kids who are raised by queer couples or queer people have about the same possibility of turning out queer themselves as kids raised by cis-het people. It's the same percentage. You're talking about a population percentage, so some of them are clearly going to be. But the majority of them end up straight, and the majority of them are fine. They love their parents. Their parents are great. It's fine. But you have this aspect where a lot of the issues that they run into aren't inherently because their parents are same-sex. It's people who are bigoted towards their parents. Like, there's this one story I saw where this little boy was actually picked on by his teacher, by a grown adult, because his parents he had two fathers. And she said some really homophobic things to him about his parents. And, it was really sad. So his fathers weren't doing anything wrong. They were great fathers. He felt safe, everything like that. But because he was being raised by two fathers, the homophobic people were taking it out on the kid, and that's not right. That's not fair. If you're a homophobic bigot, if you're a queerphobic bigot, don't take it out on the queer people's kids. You can take it out on the queer adults that are raising the kid and talk to them about it. You might get smacked in the face or something, but whatever. But don't drag the kid into it. That's fucked up. And there's this weird third category of kids who are raised by queer people, where it's all the same story, is the weird thing with this third category that I found. They find religion, they find God. Every single one of them that has done this, that has found God, found Jesus, become religious, every single one of them, they say the same exact line, which is, just because I don't agree with your lifestyle doesn't mean I hate you. They all say that. It's almost like a script. It is bizarre. But what it is, it's like sort of a cognitive dissonance. They have love and affection for their parents and respect for their parents, being that they are, their parents are queer, but raised them. And then they have to combat this brainwashing from the religion that tells them that their parents are wrong. And they're trying to rationalize away the fact that advocating against rights for their parents causes harm to them. And then people use it to justify hate towards them. They say they don't hate, but what they often run into in their cognitive dissonance is that while they do that, they say, I don't agree with the lifestyle, but that doesn't mean I hate. They run into is people use going, like, first of all, they advocate for policies that go against queer rights, and then they see how that hurts them, but then they see the people who are in that camp with them, and they do hate them, and it's used to rationalize hate. And a lot of the times, that category of kids, they run into that situation where one of two things happens. Either they leave religion altogether, or they go to a denomination of the religion that is more progressive. So I just found that interesting. But as I was doing research into it, like I said, I ran into an organization that produces data points, studies, and stuff like that. The studies are fake. They're confirmation biased. They're pulled from the past and outdated, or just complete lies. And that's where Matt Walsh is getting the information from, is this organization and this woman. And that's why, like, the critiques from the consensus, the academic consensus on queer couples, that the critiques are not coming from a place of like, oh, I'm progressive, I'm just going to support gay people. Like, there's serious like problems with their thesis on like being hateful towards queer people raising kids. there's serious problems there that they run into that make this conclusion they're coming to, their premises is just full of holes, and it just doesn't make sense, regardless of how you feel about it. If you take your job in academia seriously and want to report descriptive reality and facts, you look at this and it's like, I'm sorry, it doesn't make sense. Now, I tend to be more on the, I think it's more than fine. I think, obviously queer couples should be able to raise kids. I don't think there's any issue with it at all. I do think that they have a higher chance of turning out better because they're essentially being raised by a community, which is more indicative of how human beings in the beginning were raised, and probably why they end up very, very emotionally and mentally healthy because of that. So it's taking me a while to do all this research because it really pushed me down a rabbit hole. So I'm still gathering up all this information, and I still got to get clips and stuff like that. So that's why I'm releasing this video, letting you know I'm working on something. It does take me a while to produce videos because I do have a debilitating chronic pain condition. My entire upper right extremity all has like nerve damage in it and stuff. So doing stuff it's hard. It takes me a while. Because I know that last video I did on Remnant, it did really, really, really well. That's not the first video I've done that's done that, though. Actually, I have videos with much higher view counts than that. But if you are new to my channel, there are videos that I made in the past that are terrible. I was being kind of an edgelord. I was being very, very naive. There's a lot of things from that era that I regret. If you see an old video on my channel that's problematic, if you don't try to comment in the comment section, because I can't guarantee that I'll get a notification that you commented. I may never see it. Email me, which you can just use the YouTube for that. That should be there, and tell me. Don't link me the video. Just tell me what video it is and the timestamp and what the issue is, and I will look into it. And if I see what you're talking about, I'll take it down, because I'm done with that stuff. I've always been pretty consistent that despite making that sort of edgy content in the past, that I am indeed leftist, and I am very progressive, but for some reason that time period I was being very stupid and had this sort of illusion that we were reaching this egalitarian society, and then Trump got into office and pulled that veil right off, and it was like, wow, no, society's got a real problem with bigotry, with hatred. We're nowhere close. And the content that's where I realized the content that I used to make was very problematic and harmful, and I needed to stop. And I was like, okay, I'm going full throttle leftist. I kind of lost myself for a while. I could sit and apologize for a lot of the things, the videos and stuff from the past. But I don't think it will suffice. It's just something I have to sit with. I made a mistake, and there are going to be people that will never be happy with me for that. And I deeply regret it. I do apologize about it. It's something I have regretted many, many times, and I brought this up in many, many videos, apologizing for that content in the past. I had no idea that what I was making was so harmful until I saw Trump take office the first time, and I was like, oh God, I can't do this anymore. I need to be. That's why the videos started getting longer, is more effort was being put into them. It was less about being shocking and edgy and more and less about being entertaining, and became more about being academically accurate, talking about facts, talking about research, and being informative and deconstructive and educational than being edgy entertainment, which you put more effort into stuff like that to try to be as accurate as you possibly can. And some of those videos in the past are not that. So yeah, just if you see a video that's problematic that I made in the past, just send me an email. You try to leave a comment under the video. Tell me the name of the video, and I'll and a timestamp and what the problem is. I'll go look at it, and if I see what you're talking about, because if I'm not just going to take it down because somebody said so. I want to verify that it's real, but if I see that, then I'll take it down. I tried to take as much of the problematic ones down as possible. There are some that are very, very edgy that I do want to leave up because they are a deliberate look into the far right, sort of a know thy enemy thing of like, educate yourself on what the far right thinks, how they operate and stuff, because you can't deconstruct them or really approach them if you don't understand like how it is that they think. If you can't recognize how they talk, how they walk, how they function, it's hard to recognize them when you see them. Know the symbols they use, know the language they use, the coded language they use, and you'll be able to spot them a lot easier. So that's kind of why I did those, was for an educational purpose, really, to understand that sort of circle of people. So I can't apologize enough for anything that I've published in the past. I can't. It's done. It's done. And I mean, it's if you had talked to me when I was because I didn't start this. I started this YouTube channel around 2012, so I've been making content for a really long time. If you had met me when I was in my 20s and then saw that content when I first started making like actual, because at first I was making what was called video art. And some of the people I gamed with, they kept begging me to do a YouTube video, open up the camera, talk to people. So that's how this came to be, was the people I played games with wanted me to make videos. And so I started doing that. And I wanted to do like debunking pseudoscience, skepticism kind of thing, and that's how I fell into but you talked to me when I was 20 and then saw some of that neo-skeptic crap, the edgelord crap that I was making, you would have been like, what happened to this guy? Like, is he okay? Does he need a hug? And actually, people who know me in real life, I was approached by some of them who actually did come up to me and ask me like, are you okay? Like, I'm really concerned with the things that you're posting, because I've always been like a very humanitarian, very peaceful, very actually really laid back, open and accepting kind of person. So this edgy content stuff that I was putting out there was like, they were like, this isn't you. Like, are you okay? So like the content I'm making now, if you talk to 20-year-old me and saw the content I'm making now, that would make a lot more sense. You'd be like, that makes sense. But that content, the edge stuff, you'd be like, what happened to this guy? And there are some things that happened, but I don't think that hiding or trying to hide behind that as an excuse is an excuse. The reality is I was duped, I was stupid, and I fell for it, and I'm not going to do that again. So that's I just wanted to make this video to let like any new subscriber know, like, it can take me a while to put out a video. There is a pro to this though, because I'm not this big gigantic YouTube channel. I'm not monetized. You don't have to worry about ads. So I can say what I want. But the reason why the videos come out, why it takes so long, is because I'm disabled, and I can't do repetitive motion for more than like 15 to 20 minutes at a time, so it makes it difficult. But the goal is I want to put stuff out there that talks about socialist stuff and tries to progress society towards more socialist society and educate to deconstruct harmful ideologies. So that's done through philosophical, sociological sort of lens. Yeah. So this one might take an extra amount of time to release, because I got to go and look at all this, and I'm trying to pull clips and stuff. But so I'm making this video to just kind of be like, hey, this is what's going on. That's why there's no script or anything. Yeah. Like, share, subscribe, comment, blah 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 blah. Out.